Hello and welcome, Ken. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today. Now, to our audience, today Ken is going to be telling us a little bit more about Weidmueller's UOS offering. But just before we do that, I'd love if you, Ken, could actually introduce yourself to the viewers. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and your professional background.
Oh, certainly. Thanks, David. Yeah, Ken Crawford. I'm Senior Director of Automation for Weidmueller North America. We're a German-based customer or a German-based company, of course. My background is really BSEE, so I've been in electrical engineering for about 30 years now. So I started off in controls, and throughout the years, this later part, last 10 years, I've been heavily invested in IoT. So this idea of remotely deployed asset connections, connectivity, data aggregation. So I bring a lot of controls background to Weidmueller, or certainly around PLCs, IO, Ethernet switches, power supplies, HMIs, and IPCs.
I see, fantastic. And I hope that helps to set things up for viewers frame who you are and your expertise. But now let's get into, I guess you could say, the red meat of the interview, what we really want to talk about, which is, of course, UOS. So start by just giving me a basic overview of what UOS is, its features, and what it can do for end users.
Certainly. So UOS is really a forward-looking vision that Weidmueller has had, and we're really adopting all of our platforms moving forward to reside on UOS. So if you think about it, years and years ago, when you bought a TV, it came with cable or a rabbit antenna, and you get 3 channels. Cable came out, and you're able to watch 40 channels. Now with smart TVs and whatnot, you can actually get the TV and connect it to the network. So I can actually buy a TV. That TV will have credentials where I log into that. I might have if it's a Samsung TV, for instance, I'll have an account on Samsung that I create on the very first one. And I set up my sound system with Bluetooth. I set up my Wi-Fi network so I can stream on that TV. And then the TV itself, Samsung doesn't make like Netflix or Amazon Video, but Samsung enables you to load the streaming services on that TV and put your own credentials in. And all of a sudden, Netflix is streaming. And you don't have to configure that application to talk to your stereo. You don't talk to your remote speakers. You don't have to configure that application to get on the net because the OS on the TV is set up to handle all of those IO kind of driver functions for you. So in a sense, UOS is that operating system on a PLC that enables you to define your network connections, that enable you to enter in credentials for a cloud connection, enable you to not only load applications on there through containerization, but it can manage those applications for you and connect to the cloud to enable remote and management, fleet management, and edge management. So UOS is really a open OS that enables third parties to be able to containerize applications like Codesys or Node-RED or AnyViz on your PLC, run your PLC and the other application at the same time, which is kind of unique. And really, it's geared towards the users that are looking for connecting and administering remotely deployed assets.
I see. So it's bringing some of that native built-in interoperability that we know so well in the consumer space, as you're using your metaphor, to the industrial space. So they have that ease of interoperability too, it sounds like. Now, tell me also, what are some of the main market drivers and trends that have influenced the development of UOS?
So a lot of it really comes down to simplification. So I know in my career in automation, if I were looking for a new PLC, one of the big drivers behind that PLC selection is ease of programmability. Is that the program that I'm using, is it available, or is it specific to that one manufacturer or one vendor? But also if I wanted to leverage that data and connect it to the cloud or remotely connect to it, then a majority of the time I would deal with a PLC manufacturer, but then I'd have to deal with another manufacturer that had a gateway, for instance, or had a VPN device, for instance, or so or a protocol converter that I'd have to stick in. So now on the DIN rail, I'm using up precious space not only for my PLC, but I've got to add complexity and cost by adding these additional components to get this extra functionality just to be a modernized, connected platform. And so UOS really saw its niche where it can simplify and integrate a lot of these other components into a single platform.
I see. So it's helping you to avoid vendor lock-in, and then also on top of that, it's getting rid of this kind of Rube Goldberg machine of protocol conversion, all of this that's necessary to take data from here to there, all these different components. Now, something else that you mentioned is containerization. You threw out the term containerization. So for members of the audience who might not be aware or perhaps might need a refresher, explain to me in a little bit more detail the concept of containerization and how that can benefit end users.
So certainly, containerization is really the concept that for each unique application, every utility, every driver, every piece of software that's necessary for that application to operate in is enveloped in a little mini environment when it's downloaded and unpacked into the PLC. So it used to be, when you would deal with PCs, for instance, you could have a program that you install on your computer and everything's running, the printer's running, everything's going well. You get another program, you install that program, and then you notice your printer no longer works. Well, it's very likely that one of the drivers in the program number 2 overwrote something, program number 1, and then it makes it very difficult to troubleshoot. And containerization really, what it really does is it increases the reliability of your applications by making sure that they don't overlap, the drivers don't overlap, and they're kind of independently run in their own environment, so that you can be assured that once you package up an application and deploy it on an asset, that it won't really interfere with the application next to it. And it really allows you to really leverage the power of and focus on your application and what your application does, instead of focusing on how do I get my application to run on this new machine that I've never seen before. So the new machine is running UOS. It is made to accept that application in a container and operate it. And that's really how we get to the other applications like Codesys and Node-RED easily.
I see. So it's giving it compartmentalization. Now, something that you did already mention a bit is UOS's ability to prevent vendor lock-in. Now you did already touch on that, but I wonder if you might be able to talk to me in a little bit more detail about the kinds of situations where vendor lock-in might be an issue for an end user, and how UOS is going to help them more specifically in surmounting that issue.
Yes, so what you find a lot in manufacturers is that there's a proprietary programmer, for instance, and that programmer is known by everybody in the field. But if you have to change your PLC or you have to change your IO, one of the big problems is now you've got to learn a new software, or you have a lot of inventory on your shelves of maybe parts and pieces that you can't reuse. So UOS is really complementary to our offering of U-Remote and our U-Control product. So U-Remote is a distributed product. It's a distributed slice IO, and what it does is it's a remote IO solution that has 14 different couplers that allow it to talk to 14 different PLCs. So vendor lock-in would say, well, if I'm going to use, an Allen Bradley PLC or a specific PLC, I have to use Allen Bradley IO. But in this world supply chain constraints that we run ourselves into, we find that it's a lot easier maybe to get a PLC, and then the I/O from us, we can enable that. So you're not locked into a single vendor. UOS has a lot of that same characteristic where, for instance, Codesys, if you have one PLC that's running Codesys today, you can take that application, port it over, just bring it right on over into our environment, our Codesys environment on UOS, and run that application with very, very little modification. So it saves a lot of time, it saves a lot of energy and money, resources in order to make that happen. So unlocking that dependence on a proprietary software application is really enabled by UOS. In some instances, you may have a special script, Python script, Node-RED script that you run that you've invested a lot of money on. That can be migrated right on over to our hardware. So you're not trapped with your hardware with that script, you can migrate that over. So it really opens up and allows for a lot of companies to migrate their control philosophy onto a Weidmueller platform.
See, so it's really liberating the end user in that way to do to take the path they think is best, regardless of any external limitations on their hardware or anything like that. Now, another prominent UOS feature that maybe we can get into the weeds about a little more is cloud-based device management. I think you alluded to this earlier as well. So one of the main benefits of this, as it's been promoted, as I understand it, is scalability. It improves scalability. Can you provide maybe some examples of scenarios where that kind of scalability might be advantageous in an industrial setting?
Yeah, so the benefit of having a OS that allows remote administration, of course, is all of the applications and mechanisms that you can take advantage of to get on the cloud, get your data onto the cloud, or gain access to your remotely deployed device. So, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, there were not very many avenues for you to pursue. You'd have to write your own driver, you'd have to write your own connector to get onto AWS or get onto Azure or to get onto your own cloud. Now, today, there are so many mechanisms that are available. Each cloud service even has a cloud connector. And so there are many share open avenues, open MQTT, Spark. There's many avenues for you to take advantage of so that you can load an application on and point your connection to any cloud or any container or any historian that you may want to use to collect the data, store the data, and any mechanism that you may want to use, if it's Twilio, for instance, to do SMS texting. So a lot of these cloud-based solutions that go from the edge all the way up to the cloud and allow you a portal, single portal to manage, have their own applications. We can easily adapt those applications on the UOS to get that PLC online. We also have our own application in the cloud. It's called Easy Connect, and Easy Connect will allow users to log on to a portal, will allow them to buy, track their assets, buy new assets, and also allow them to do edge and fleet management remotely to their device through their credential. So it's a very powerful single pane of glass that we're enabling our customers to be able to connect these remotely deployed assets to and manage the firmware, manage the applications, and actually help them manage understanding the monitoring and the status of those remotely deployed devices.
I see. Now, something else. Obviously, the nature of UOS is such that it really could be applied almost anywhere. I mean, it is an open operating system for that reason, but I wonder if there are any specific types of environments or industry sectors where you feel it would more likely be beneficial than others in terms of who you think is going to be most prominently using UOS.
So that's a great question, because if you think about it, years and years ago, automation was really a factory. You always heard about factory automation. Automation was really relegated towards plants that were immobile, right? So you'd have networks wired in, you'd have servers, and the IT department would take care of. But now, more and more, you see remotely deployed automation, and we see OEMs now that are deploying everything from compressors. We see utility companies, semiconductor and wastewater, conveyance, food, bev, extrusion machines. All these machines that could even be in traditional production facilities that have infrastructure for connectivity. We see a lot of them being part of a larger business model where they want to be able to remotely deploy, monitor their piece of equipment for operation. They want to extend a warranty to a customer that goes from a break fix model or a scheduled maintenance model where they're getting paid X amount of dollars a month or a year to make 3 visits a year, or to have someone call them up and say, hey, I need priority to come out here. When they're monitoring that piece of equipment remotely, they can get an indication immediately when there's a problem. And a lot of times they can log in and diagnose that problem without having to incur the expense of a technician getting on a plane and a hotel room and food and the hours there. And also it allows them to get the right part on the truck if they do need to engage in a visit, because they have a little bit more insight in the ability to understand what exactly the problem is. So any company that wants to remain competitive in this world of IoT and expand their business offerings to include services, or even an income or a new entrant coming into a new business, and they want to ensure that their products look like they're of high quality. And nothing says high quality like my machine has been running for 5 years without a hiccup. Well, being able to remotely monitor that equipment, not only does it give you insight into where your early machine failures are so that you can apply it to your existing designs, but it also can send your service personnel there so that you can fix it without the customer feeling a failure. So it looks like the machine's been running for 5 years, and that's worthy of additional investment and improving your name in the marketplace for a quality product.
Okay, so now, as we get closer to wrapping up and get a little bit closer to our conclusion, something else I would ask you is, if there are other open operating systems like this on the market, and if so, how Weidmueller differentiates UOS from those other similar and competing options?
Yeah, so I'm not really aware of open. This is kind of a difference here, in that open means really we allow our operating system to the source code, and we'll allow you to develop your own code on top of ours. That's kind of unheard of in the industry. There are a number of companies that do offer enhanced connectivity products. I mean, Bosch and ABB and Allen Bradley. I think the big difference for us at Weidmueller is that we not only have the technology in the devices, but we also have people, ASN group, my ASN Automation Solutions Network. What we are a group of very capable controls engineers that have been trained not only in traditional controls, but also edge device deployments. And we look for ways to really map a business case to operational metrics for our customers that are adopting this new technology to really make the most of it. And so not only do you have salespeople that are knowledgeable, not only do you have field application engineers that are knowledgeable, but we actually have people on the ground to provide that white glove deployment. And we can have our technical support team is engaged in that white glove model as well, to make sure that our customers have a phone call or a phone number to call in case they have an issue. And we can a lot of times be able to remotely log into that device and help them troubleshoot that product ourselves. So it's a little bit different engagement and customer service model than most, So that really is, we're hoping that we can lean on that to get a deep penetration on this model with customers.
I see. And I would imagine when deploying new technologies, in particular, that level of service is extremely important to make sure that your new technology performs as you want it to, and you can get the return on it you want. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, one more question before we conclude. Are there any specific current or maybe future potential use cases for UOS that you'd like to share? I think it's a new product, so I don't know if you would have any.
Yeah, it was newly released,
Yeah.
but we definitely have spent quite a bit of time with customers in trying to identify the value proposition and really target the feature and benefits of the product to customers that are definitely in our niche. And our niche really are panel builders, machine builders here in the US. And so we do have a customer, a refrigeration customer, that needed a core controls platform that allowed them on that core platform to set themselves up for a small compressor, refrigeration compressor, up to a very large systems that possibly have up to 6 or 9 compressor systems. And they wanted a way to remotely monitor, and basically they're kind of at the top end of complexity when it came to their solution. Their solution was a homegrown solution, and that they had data aggregation piece of that. So they were using like Node-RED to collect data and forward that off. And they were using another IPC for control run and codesys. And they were running scripting algorithms. And they were having a hard time basically maintaining the Linux OS on their IPC. And with all of the firmware update requirements that they're running into and all of the security requirements with VPNs that they were running into, very complex system. And with supply chain being what it was, all these parts and pieces, some parts you couldn't get, some parts were on a delay, so you really needed to stock up. We came in there with a UC20, and we were able to incorporate all the parts and pieces into a single unit. And then we have the added benefit with UOS. They were wanting to be poised for the future, so they didn't want to be just tied into a PLC. They wanted to be able to extend to HMIs in the future and IPCs. And with the nature of UOS, you're able to take your application in codesys, or take your application in Node-RED, or take your application for data aggregation, your cloud-based notification system, and take it all and package it up and place it right onto an HMI. And now your HMI is running your solution and running all that software investment. So you have Weidmueller content on the shelf, and then your control solution, all the investment that you made, all the troubleshooting that you've done, you don't have to port any of it. It just easily becomes 100% compatible and migrated. So they pick up the project, put it on another platform, and they're off to the races. And they really enjoy that model.
I see. So it's a fantastic example to conclude on. Now, I do think we've gone through all the questions I had for you. I think we've covered all the bases. So unless there's anything else you'd like to add before we conclude, I think we can go ahead and draw this down.
No, I certainly appreciate the time that we've spent. Pack Expo was a great learning experience for us to validate this platform. In September, as you mentioned, the release is just out now. So I think that we've got a very significant product in the marketplace with UOS. It's a big differentiator for us and for our customers. So to be able to get them up and running quickly and flex with extensibility and flexibly, implement our control solution on our products and implement their applications on our products. I really appreciate this opportunity to explain that.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Ken, for taking the time to sit down with us and share your expertise. And also thank you one more time to our audience, of course, for tuning in.